One super simple intervention that's capable of reducing the frequency and intensity of things like neck pain, headaches, migraines, acute and chronic lower back pain, knee pain, and fibromyalgia. Let's talk about it. The intervention that I'm talking about here is walking, one of the most fundamental human activities and something that most of us have been doing since we were about a year old. Unfortunately, as we get up into our adult years, especially if you live in Western society, there's a strong tendency to walk less and rely on motorized forms of transportation more. It seems that walking has become a casualty of us all trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. And there's just no question that this trend has been incredibly damaging for our health. And more research is showing that for pain sufferers in particular, incorporating this type of basic human movement into your daily routine is so very important. As an intervention, walking appears to be particularly well suited to stopping lots of different pain problems before they ever start. So you can definitely think of it as one of those ounce of prevention type strategies. And this was confirmed with regard to neck pain in this study that was published in the European Spine Journal. These researchers took over 360 people who were considered at high risk for neck pain because they worked sedentary jobs in an office environment, and they followed them for a full year while they added in various amounts of walking to their daily routine. And what they found at the end of this study was that a small addition of just 1,000 extra steps each day, roughly equivalent to 0.4 of a mile, led to a 14% reduction in the risk for neck pain. Just to put that into perspective so that you understand how little is required in terms of time commitment to achieve these results, the average adult takes somewhere between 17 and 21 minutes to walk 1 full mile. That means that to achieve that 14% reduction in neck pain, all these people had to do was add a moderately paced 7 to 9 minute walk to their day. And take a look at this randomized controlled clinical trial that was just published last month in the journal The Lancet. These researchers took over 700 adults who had recently been diagnosed with non-specific lower back pain, and they split them up into 2 groups. Group number 1 was the control group. They received no intervention. Those in group 2 were put onto a walking program, in addition to which they received 6 educational sessions with a physiotherapist. All of these people were followed for at least 1 year. At the end of that year, what these researchers found was that there was a significant reduction in the recurrence of lower back pain among those people in the walking program. The primary outcome that the researchers in the study were interested in was the number of days to first recurrence, meaning how long it took for these people's pain to come back. And what they found at the end of the study was that for those in the control group who had received no intervention, they had an average of about 112 days before their pain came back. But for those in the walking group, it was an average of 208 days, meaning they had almost twice as many pain-free days as the other group. And the frequency and duration that these researchers found to be most effective for reducing the recurrence of chronic back pain was 30 minutes of walking 5 days a week. Next up is another widespread and extremely debilitating chronic pain condition, and this one has, unfortunately, almost no good treatment options. It often leads people to lock themselves away inside of a dark room for days at a time. What I'm talking about here is migraines. With regard to migraines, I have to draw your attention to this 2015 paper that was published in the Clinical Journal of Pain. These researchers did a deep dive into all the scientific literature on the subject of exercise and chronic pain, and they state flat out in this paper that aerobic exercise is the best option in migraine prophylaxis. And in this 2020 paper that was published in the journal Current Pain and Headache Reports, the authors did an extensive literature review specifically on the subject of using exercise for migraine prevention. And they state, quote, "Psychologically, there is evidence that exercise improves migraine self-efficacy and internalizes the locus of control, leading to reduced migraine burden." Translation: exercise gives migraine sufferers some agency over their problem so that it doesn't affect them so much. And they go on to say that a sufficiently rigorous aerobic exercise regimen by itself is sufficient to yield a statistically significant reduction in migraine frequency, intensity, and duration. And finally, higher intensity training appears to confer more benefit. So higher intensity aerobic exercise seems to be even more beneficial for people suffering with migraines. As impressive as walking is as a strategy for the prevention of all these different problems, research has also shown that it's an effective form of treatment for people who already have certain kinds of pain. including the most common pain condition in the world. This article that was published in the European Spine Journal found that just 10 minutes of walking on a treadmill at a self-selected speed, meaning whatever speed is comfortable for the individual, is enough to significantly reduce acute lower back pain. Interestingly, they found that 5 minutes of additional walking conveyed no additional benefits in terms of pain reduction. So 10 minutes of walking seems to be the sweet spot. And in light of this research, it may be time for us to rethink our approach to acute lower back pain and start reaching for our best walking shoes instead of for a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. And walking also appears to be very beneficial for people suffering from chronic lower back pain. Just take a look at what the authors of this 2018 meta-analysis that was published in the journal Musculoskeletal Science and Practice had to say. After reviewing and analyzing 9 different studies on the subject, they said, quote, "Walking, which is easy to perform and highly accessible, can be recommended in the management of chronic lower back pain to reduce pain and disability. Walking's also been found to be beneficial for certain conditions where you might not think it would be." And in this 2022 paper that was published in the journal Arthritis and Rheumatology, researchers determined that walking was not only super effective for reducing the pain that's associated with osteoarthritis of the knee, but that it actually improves knee alignment and slows the structural progression of osteoarthritic changes, meaning it reduces joint degeneration and helps preserve your knees in the long run. Importantly, the researchers here point out that there may be an upper limit in terms of how much walking a person with osteoarthritis of the knee should be doing. They cite that there is moderate evidence of safety up to 10,000 steps a day, but that it's probably not a good idea to go beyond that. The overall conclusion from this paper was that, quote, "The findings from our study provide a glimmer of hope that there may be an inexpensive intervention that modifies the structure and symptoms related to osteoarthritis, the most common type of arthritis and a source of substantial disability." There's also some really interesting research that clearly demonstrates the kinds of benefits that a simple daily walking routine can have on people suffering with fibromyalgia. But I think that the authors of this 2022 paper that was published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health summed it up best when they said, quote, "Walking is one of the most effective treatments in reducing the symptoms of patients with fibromyalgia." However, as the authors of this paper correctly point out, it is extremely challenging to get people with fibromyalgia to actually adhere to a walking program. And the reason for that is that when a person with fibromyalgia first starts out walking, they often experience an increase in pain and or fatigue. And this is understandably discouraging, but the key to getting around that so that you can get the benefits from walking is to conduct your own experiment. You see, the research is super clear that walking is one of the most effective ways to reduce the symptoms associated with fibromyalgia, but no 2 cases of fibromyalgia are exactly the same. And so it's up to you to figure out what frequency and volume, meaning time or distance, works best for you. Here are some tips that may be helpful when you're first starting out. In terms of frequency, you should be aiming to get a walk in somewhere between 3 and 7 days each week. In terms of walking time, you should select an amount that allows you to complete it without experiencing any increase in pain or fatigue. This is critically important. Now, this may mean that you're starting out with a short walk around the block, or it may mean that you're simply walking out to your mailbox. That's not what's important. What's important is that you find a distance that you can do regularly without increasing your symptoms at all. Once you've established that baseline, you can slowly and incrementally work on increasing it as the days and weeks go by. But as a general rule, the thing to keep in mind is that chronic pain seems to benefit most from shorter walks. I'm talking like 10 to 15 minutes of duration done more frequently throughout the week. So that's going to do it for this week. If you're interested in reading more about any of the articles that I quoted in this video, I'll put references for those in the description down below. Beyond that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button before you head out of here, and I'll see you next week.